Hello and welcome to the Racers HQ podcast. I'm your host, Matt Murphy, and joining me on the line tonight is our dedicated co host, Pat Mulry. How are you doing tonight, Pat?
I am doing great and excited to be back on the pod again, podcasting once again for our hundreds of listeners throughout the United States and around the world.
Back on the pod. We're not apologizing for the gap, but there was a gap. Don't worry about it, kids.
That's right.
Yeah, we were busy, okay? You drink anything tonight, Mulry?
I am. The juice tonight is in honor tribute of our friend Hunter Biederman. This is the Russell's Reserve single barrel. I want to say it's a 10-year. It's one of Hunter's favorite, mostly non-allocated bourbons. So I saw that sitting on the shelf. I thought, we'll drink that and shout it out to HB. How about yourself?
Yeah, shout out HB. I'm drinking water. It's the mocktail of vodka. It's cheap. It's clear. Cheap and clear.
Supposedly healthy.
Yeah, according, bunch of woo-woo scientists.
If you listen to doctors and, follow the experts.
Yeah. Anyway, boring. But I had a cocktail at Rotary, so I'm just trying to pace myself,
That's good. What was that? What was that cocktail?
So we have one gentleman trying to service like 40 Rotarians within the span of an hour. And so I just went double tall vodka soda, make sure I get all my juice and hydration, in one round. So
and a little bit of fizzy carbonation too.
Yeah, I get a little piece of lime in there so I don't get scurvy. I'm checking all the boxes.
That's right.
Yeah.
No rickets on you.
Ricket free thus far.
Ricket free since '93.
That's probably accurate. Yeah, that's probably accurate. Want to give a quick shout out. We've got a new listener, my buddy Mark, who I see a lot of these days. He is listening to the podcast. He wants to get into some autocross. He wants to get into some racing. He's been figuring it out, and so step one is fix his Volvo. So that's where we're at this point. And so he bought a smoke machine. He's got some sort of like P0172 error code, Bank One running rich kind of thing, and everything on the Volvo forums, which are not substantial. This is not like the Honda forums or the Mazda forums. The Volvo forums are crickets. It basically says, look, you're going to clean the MAF, and that's not going to do anything. You might replace your O2 sensor, and that's not going to do much, and it's probably just a cracked vacuum line. So he ordered a $60 smoke test machine off of Amazon. And so I know you've used that system before. You just plug it into a known good port and kind of see what happens. Is that the trick?
Yeah, we actually use it pretty religiously at this point on the BMW. If the intake manifold or anything attached to the intake manifold comes on or off, it gets smoke tested again because the running a unanticipated vacuum on that it makes it always run like crap. And so when we first used the smoke machine, well, we started off trying to make DIY one, and then we ended up buying probably that same one that he has off of Amazon. And it's very simple. It's easy to use. What we typically do is, of course, because we have the makes 10 horsepower cone filter on the race car, we take that off. And then I think the way that we run it typically is we take a nitrile glove and we poke a hole in the end of one finger and run the tube from the smoke machine into that and probably tape that on or zip tie it so it's not leaking back out the end of the glove. And then through the wrist part of the glove, we stretch that around the neck of the MAF and maybe tape that or something if it's loose. But I think on that end, it's usually kind of tight just because of the wrist part of the glove is tight. And you use mineral oil in it. Typically, you don't need very much. And the electric goes to at least ours runs off of 12 volt power. So we just run it to
Like hook it up to the battery or
to a battery main and to a ground on the car.
Mhm.
And it doesn't take long for it to start, outputting smoke. I mean, it's less than a minute usually. And it doesn't need to go for very long, to start seeing it. If you don't see smoke within a couple of minutes, you don't have a vacuum leak.
Okay. Good to know.
And then if you do, then, obviously you need to,
fix it.
seal those up. I don't know on that. I don't know that engine well enough. Which Volvo is it?
It's a 2-liter turbo S60.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that engine at all.
2015. Yeah.
So, I mean, how it is with all the rubber hoses and stuff like that. They get old and grimy and cracky at their connection points. And so my guess is if he's got a vacuum problem, that's where it's going to be. But, that's funny that it would, if that's what's resulting in it running rich, because normally it's the other way. It runs lean. It's getting too much air.
Okay.
So it may be, clean the MAF and replace the O2 sensors. May make the difference. It might be, it could be a throttle position sensor too.
Okay.
Because it might be telling that, giving bad information about that, and so, the engine will default. A lot of those engines will default to running rich, to keep from melting the engine down. If it's not getting the right information. So
we're going to pull some logs in a couple different states this afternoon, both at idle and at about 2,000 RPMs for a while, and pull logs for both the O2 sensors and see if we notice anything strange on that output.
Yeah.
So we figured out what the voltage range should be and what stoich is and things like that. And he's got he bought a good scanner that we can, extract data from. So we got some tools, keep playing with it.
Cool.
But yeah. Well, cool. Well, yeah, excited to see Mark do some autocross. I think he's going about it the right way, starting with that. And then, he's got a helmet on the way, and we'll have him out on track before too long. So excited.
Yeah, autocross is a great way to start. I mean, most of you guys came in it that way, and it's much better than than the way that I did, which is just diving into the deep end. So
yeah.
And of course, if we all were really smart, what we would do is just get into shifter carts and throw all the cars away. But we're not that.
Yeah, or LO206s. Yeah. By the way, everything I own is for sale, and I will gladly go race LO206s. Twist my arm. If you need a K-Swap Miata and have too much money on your hand, give me a call. So we got a pretty big garage update section because we just spent the whole weekend working in the garage. I know you've been spending the last 20 years of your life working in the garage, Mulry, but we had a good 5 guys down there probably for what we call the AHOD, the all hands on deck. Finish up the E36 BMW race car, get it ready for Hallett in 2 weekends.
Yep.
And so I don't know. Kick it off, Mulry. What did we get into this weekend?
Well, so that was awesome. Our all hands on deck is usually many hands on deck rather than actually all, which is thankful, because if I had 9 people in the garage all trying to work on the car at the same time, I think we would all go crazy. So big thanks to you and Roland and Eric coming down from OKC, and to Mr. Spickard rolling over from the east side of Dallas, and of course to Rachel for enabling the entire process.
VIP,
no question, VVIP for me. And so we got a lot done. We were in good shape before, but we needed to finish up some odds and ends, and so that was good. Odds and ends like. One of the things I noticed when we were at ECR was that the rear view mirror was too close to the driver, so it was hard. It was it wasn't that it was hard to see out of. It's that your focal length of your eyes had to change too much, right? Like you couldn't just glance at it out the corner of your eye to see if there was somebody behind you. So Eric got that adjusted, and we did some fuel cell testing to figure out make sure that we had the right amount of fuel goes into it and comes out of it, and make sure that the fuel gauge is hopefully operational this time.
Yeah, when's the last time we had an operating fuel gauge?
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm very excited.
We've tried many times over the years. You would think, this shouldn't be that tough an operation, but it's always eluded us. I probably have, I would guess, 6 different fuel senders out in the garage that all are supposed to work, and none of which at one point we had one that worked, that was a voltage output and a gauge that was voltage based. And that one worked for a while.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, that's been.
What did we end up using? A LiDAR gauge, or is it? Yeah,
this ends up being. So the gauge itself is just a standard resistance gauge from Autometer, and the one on the fuel cell is actually a LiDAR based sender, which is kind of interesting.
Wow.
But it had the main advantage it had was that it fit the existing aperture in the lid for a sender, whereas any of the others were going to require enlarging. Not the whole pattern for the mounting bolts was the same, but the center part would have had to have been enlarged, which isn't that big a deal, except you got to take it off it's a couple hours, take it off the fuel cell, and so you're not, shredded aluminum inside your fuel cell, which you don't, really want.
Aluminum shavings are not, sources of fuel.
Right. I mean, they're suboptimal to have metal shavings in your fuel supply.
Yeah.
So got that done. So that was exciting. And, the most noticeable part, was we got the big graphics package on both sides of the car. The gigantic stickers that, with the new, angry Miku on the sides.
Oh yeah.
So I hope our, all of our fans of Miku will enjoy this. This is a semi-custom design. I don't think you'll have seen it somewhere else. We weren't able to just buy these out of off the shelf in Guangdong or something like that and have them shipped here. Had to have them custom printed for us by a shop in Indianapolis, Indiana, that actually does graphics for like IndyCar and probably all sorts of other pro level race teams.
Yeah.
So they were really high quality graphics, and I think we did a better than typical job putting them on.
We did a good job.
We've got a lot of experience with that now, so it's more bubble free, more wrinkle free than before. Not definitely not professional level, but not rank amateur, which would be pretty much what we'd always done before.
Yeah, we took some clear tape and taped down the leading edges on a lot of that stuff to keep it from peeling off at speed, which tends to happen. But there's some great looking graphics. So it's like printed on white, but man, you can't. I mean, it doesn't look like some janky, like gonna fade looking, printed material. I mean, this is nice work. So, it's all within the safety feature budget, right? You want people to be able to see us so they don't T-bone us.
Right.
And that's a safety feature.
Absolutely.
So it's still $500 car.
It's safety and theme, right? I mean, theme is always exempt from budget. So so long your theme isn't go faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. That's not adequate. But
compound turbo isn't a theme.
Right.
Yeah.
Although electric weed eater powered electric turbocharger, that would be a theme, and that would be acceptable.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Also, not very effective, but even better would be electric weed eater powered blow through carburetor turbocharger. That would be very adopted. No one would get upset about that.
In the pocket. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. So let's see, what else did we do? There was a lot of kind of little stuff that like, always adds up. We had to finish up. I finally got some of the extra mounting hardware in for the front splitter, so Roland was able to finish off, the front splitter and get that mounted, and then you guys got the garden edging air dam, the auto endurance standard garden edging air dam, so that we look compliant with the rest of budget auto racing. And that's a very 50-50 kind of thing. Yeah. So hopefully it'll actually
it's
work.
Black and red. You want to talk about our partners on the splitter hardware, or is that top secret?
No, it's not top secret. It's Professional Awesome. This was a set of prototype mounts. Not really the mounts. The mounts are pretty much off the shelf hardware. It's the way the mounts attach
more of an
to
adapter.
The chassis. Yeah. Off of it's a bent piece of aluminum off of the front kind of bumper horn area, which is a good mounting spot for that. And so we're prototyping those for them. And then otherwise it's just, Professional Awesome off the shelf hardware, which is nice. I mean, it doesn't do anything to make their hardware doesn't do anything to make the car faster or, more aerodynamic or anything. That it just makes it easier to get it on and off the car for putting it on the trailer. So, but that alone is a real benefit given how low the front of the car is.
It's pretty handy for fabrication as well, right? Because we had that splitter on and off a dozen times at least, and it's literally one step to remove the entire splitter. So that was pretty helpful. So it was cool to see that.
Big shout out to Professional Awesome for that. Hopefully they'll get their stuff back in stock. I was looking the other day to after we got done to buy some spare parts just to have on hand, in case in case that splitter gets scraped off the car going agricultural or something, and there's they have nothing in stock at this point. So just try and keep it on track. Don't lose the splitter.
Yeah. Don't go mowing the lawn between 5 and 6. That's our operative. But yeah, very good. What else did we? We sealed up the back windshield.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We broke out the Atari 2600 at some point during the dinner party. So
that's right. So that was a good part. On Saturday night, we got to celebrate Matt Murphy's 29th birthday, and and we had a nice event. Hunter was able to come over, even though he wasn't able to make it during the day. He was able to make it for the party, the after party. And so Rachel and your lovely bride were both there for dinner and drinks and birthday cake and celebration. And then as we all sat around telling what are increasingly old man shaking his fist at the sky stories about who had the oldest computer or whatever it was.
Wow. That was a race to the bottom.
Yeah, it was.
You ever have a turbo button on your PC? Yeah, that was. But no, we've got some very experienced IT folk on the team, apparently.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And so we got to talking about game systems, and Rachel mentioned that my mom and dad had kept our original Atari 2600 from 1979 or 1980 and had brought it down for Christmas a couple years ago, and it was actually still in operational condition, which was a huge surprise to me when they dropped it off, or when they brought it with them for Christmas, and still have it hooked up to the TV, haven't turned it on. I mean, probably in 2 years, pretty much, and it fired right up with most of the games. Some of the cartridges didn't fire up. Trying to think of the ones that didn't. Somehow we had a
MASH. MASH was a no-go.
Right. I mean, why was there ever a video game for the TV show MASH? I
Yeah.
It's beyond me. Apparently, and my mom had saved along with the game cartridges. She had saved the they all came with paper documentation back then, of course.
Yeah.
Like a little manual. And so like the MASH thing, I think I don't think there's any war fighting in it. I think part of it is like maybe evacuating patients, maybe like a driving game part, and then there's like it looks like there's a part of the game that's kind of like operation.
Okay.
Just from look at the paper, since we weren't able to get the game to boot, but Pitfall didn't work, which was too bad because Pitfall was one of my favorites when I was a kid.
Now the books are really important back then because I mean this is what I was talking about at the party because you can't tell what the hell they're actually trying to represent on screen with like 3 bits or whatever. Like I need some artwork. I need I need to spur my imagination. Right.
Oh, those are tanks. That's what those are supposed to be.
Yeah. I thought
they look
were
like H's. They're actually
capital
tanks.
W. Yeah.
I was bummed that MASH didn't work. I don't remember ever having seen that game work. But I really wanted to hear the theme song in like in 2-bit. Because I would hope that's what like when you plugged it in and its opening music was that song from the show. I don't know. Maybe maybe one of the modes was like trying to get Hot Lips Houlihan to lay one on you. Maybe surreptitiously, like trick her into kissing you. I don't know.
I never watched MASH, so I'm just going to trust that is a reference.
Really? Never?
We're a Gunsmoke guy. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah, so yeah, the car is looking pretty sharp. I tried to build some additional aerodynamic fences, if you will, to keep some air off the tires. I'll give them a C+. But if they stay on the car, I'll be excited. But it's fun to play with that stuff in Lemons because a lot of it's restricted in in NASA and things like that. So we're talking very inexpensive rolls of ABS or garden edging.
Right.
There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with aerodynamics in Lemons with very little money, just to play around with it and see what works. So somebody was saying we should get some gloves with webbing on them to help with the aerodynamics along the straights. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, the car's looking real sharp. I think I put some grip tape on the interior so we don't slip around. So
yeah, I mean, it was a lot of 15 or 30-minute jobs, just kind of here or there. But that's the sort of stuff that just it kind of adds up. So
we're going to be up there May 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know, whatever that weekend is. Come see us. Definitely, we'll be in between turns 9 and 10 up there at the top of the hill by all the that camping area where all those trees and the playground and everything are. I want to say it's 9, or I don't know what the paddock space is, but we'll be up in that corner having a good time.
know. I've never been there. You guys have all are all Hallett veterans, and I'm a complete Hallett rookie. So I'll just be following your lead that weekend.
I am attempting to revive an ATV that I air quotes.
Oh yeah,
I picked up for the team, air quotes. This is how we communicate things to our wives occasionally. What's that? Oh, I'm just picking it up for the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got a little clapped out ATV. I think it's an 08 Big Bear 400 by the folks over there at Yamaha. Yeah, it's just it was spewing gas out of the carburetor, and
oh my gosh,
crankcase is full of fuel, and it wouldn't idle. But
figure.
Yeah, but I was talking to Eric about it, and of course Eric's got all the answers, and I appreciate him. I told him, yeah, I bought a carb rebuild kit. I figured I'd get that fixed. He says, let me stop you right there. He's like, you can buy a Chinese carburetor off Amazon and have it overnighted for $30 and replace the whole thing. It's going to run like a top. And I got that job done in an hour yesterday between work and making dinner.
Yeah.
And it runs like a top. So
awesome.
Big shout out, Eric. We appreciate you.
Always. That's awesome.
Carburetor work is, man, that is some nice, easy caveman technology right there. You know, I can appreciate it. No
That's it.
laptops booted up or anything. It just works.
You don't even have to know what a Venturi is for a Venturi to work.
That's right. Yeah. And it's not even like mounted to anything hard. It was just like, zip tied between two, intake tubes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously a very accurate way to deliver fuel. I'm sure it's
Good
got
enough, apparently.
great emissions.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully that thing unlocks some really cool functionality in the paddock, or just gets us around, and we can have some fun with it. But I'll be trailering that up to the event, so check me out on that. Yeah,
well, that's
fun
super
stuff.
exciting. Have you located the ATV trailer that you were discussing?
No, I'm not. The single axle ATV trailer, I have not purchased one, but we should talk offline. If we think that's an option, I can do that. One concern was the single axle ATV trailer. If we take it off the ATV, then we don't really have a stable trailer, right? So,
Right.
because we'd have to park that kind of at the end of the pits and then carry our gas, as opposed to having a cart that we could take off the trailer and cart to the pit area. So
yeah. So do you think we can just hook up the fuel cart to the ATV? Well,
I think we just do that.
It's even got a second seat, so somebody theoretically could just be a human trailer hitch if necessary.
I mean, and it's got a tow hitch, so we can
Yeah.
rig something up, right? Yeah. I mean, we could take the ball off of it and put a big ring,
Yeah.
in that gap there or something. Yeah, we can figure this out. So let's go with that idea for now. I think it'll give us more flexibility overall. So Mark, breaking news, guys, breaking news. Listener Mark just texted me. He thinks it's a vacuum leak. So we're on to something here.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right. So while we were partying, and by the way, I'm not a part of this party, but Pat, you and Hunter and a lot of other very respectable human beings in this world have taken on a wonderful hobby I'm glad I'm adjacent to, and that's having a lot of great bourbon on hand. So we were enjoying some great bourbon, and one of the questions that came out of that was, what do these lackluster Formula One contracts look like, right?
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
who signs Lewis Hamilton to a multi-year contract just to have it ripped up in front of him to learn that he's going to Ferrari, which in turn is just a worthless piece of paper until it all comes to fruition. So, Pat, you're an attorney of sorts. You know how to
some repute
read contracts, and so we thought to ourselves, I wonder what those things look like. And so I did some Googling, and we found the Senna Marlboro contract or something for
Senna's Lotus contract for the 1987 and 1988 Formula One seasons. We have not located the contract itself yet, but as part of the Panama Papers, you may listeners may remember the Panama Papers document leak in like 2016 that was kind of notoriously showed a lot of Panamanian registered companies where people in the in various different countries, especially political figures, were using these companies that maybe didn't have their names associated with it to dodge taxes primarily, or to own assets, to be the beneficial owner of assets without having their name associated with the asset itself. But there was a leak of documents that actually kind of tied all. I mean, like, everybody knew that was going on, but weren't able to tie anyone to anything. And then there was this document leak in 2016 that was able to tie a whole bunch of folks to that. It was a big deal. Well, so one of the things that came out of that was that Nico Rosberg's contract with Mercedes was associated with a company out of Jersey, which is the Channel Islands, which is another sort of off haven that's been used over the years, called oh gosh, I said it earlier, now I can't remember it. Not Associated Good.
Yeah. Like Associated Victory or
I don't remember what it is. Anyhow,
Victory Unlimited. Yeah.
it was something AG. I'm just not remembering
Okay.
what it is. And but the problem is the Panama Papers. There's a database produced by a group or kept up by a group called, I think it's like ICIJ, like the International Coalition of Interested Journalists or something like that. And the database itself is up, but not the underlying documents, which are like 2 or 3 terabytes of documents. So I have not been able to put my hands on Nico Rosberg's F1 contract, which is probably close to 10 years old now, but at least would be a modern Formula One contract, which is probably much more in depth and has a lot more provisions in it and specificity than the old F1 contracts. But you were able to find, I don't know how that came around, because it was in a University of University of Southern California database or something like that. Some thing that they had done, journalistic thing, I don't know. An old Ayrton Senna contract from his 87-88. It was an 87-88 contract with Team Lotus. And so Senna actually drove for Lotus in 87 and then was so disenchanted with the Lotus's performance that he bailed on that contract for 88, and there was an out provision in the contract. And then went to I think, did he go to Williams first or did he go to McLaren first? Maybe McLaren. I don't remember the order that he went at that. I think it was McLaren, right? Because he went to McLaren and he was there with Prost, and then the two of them didn't get on, and then Prost blackballed him at Williams after that for a year at some point. But it was very interesting. So the way that that contract works, and I suspect sort of by inference that all the Formula One contracts worked then and probably still work now, is that Senna and his people, formed a personal services corporation, and it's the personal services corporation that actually is the contracting entity with. At that point, it was Team Lotus, and so then there are a whole bunch of provisions of that contract. One of which is that the whatever the name of Senna's personal services corporation, will produce the services of the driver as required in the contract. And so the things that Senna was required to do was like be at every race, be at every team meeting. I think there were 10 in that contract. It provided for like 10 promotional days for Team Lotus sponsors. So photo shoots and I don't know if that involved at that point, if it involved the car being on track, because who knows what the restrictions on that were back then. Maybe nothing. That at that point they had just switched from John Player Special to Camel and Elf, and they were Honda engined. So those were kind of those were their 3 big sponsors. So I'm sure it was a lot of Camel cigarette kind of stuff. The team had to provide a certain amount of his, living expenses while in Europe. I think it was 40,000 pounds that year. And of course, in 87, I mean, the season wasn't like at all like it is now. Like there was there was the Brazil Grand Prix, there was a Japan Grand Prix. Australia, I think, was like the last race of the season at that time, and instead of the first. But that was about it. There weren't a lot of, what we like now consider the fly, or well, I mean, they're not even fly races much anymore because it's so much of the season. But for a long time, those were, the flyaway season, right? Maybe though, Brazil, Australia, Japan, that might have been it.
Did they do Canada back then?
I don't know if they were doing Canada then or not. They might have been. Yeah. But that'd be about all of the other one. There weren't any of them in the Mideast. There wasn't a China. There wasn't, India, South Korea. Not that we have those anymore either. I don't think there was a Singapore at that point. So the season was a lot shorter, but that was required. So the Personal Services Corporation is required to produce him, and then I think his first season in '87, his base compensation was £1.5 million, and
Okay.
that would go up to like £1.65 million for the second season, if he completed it, or if he didn't, but that would have been it for the second season. And then he also had bonuses for every driver point and maybe every team point. There was a certain amount of bonus for every one of those. I think it wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. I think it was like $4,000. It's kind of weird because some parts of it are designated in pounds and some in US dollars, which was funny. It was 4,000 units of one of those currencies for like every driver point and every championship point. And then, there was some really kind of mundane stuff in there. Like, he had first option if he wanted to keep the trophy for a particular race.
Okay.
Which I never, like, I wouldn't have thought of that at all. Like, I assume, there's a race for the team and a race for a trophy for the team and a trophy for the driver. But, maybe back then there wasn't. Maybe now there isn't. I don't know. Lotus had certain things that they were required to do as a team in order to maintain the contract being the pendency of the contract. Like, they couldn't miss 3 consecutive races. If they were unable to field a car for 3 consecutive races, then I don't know if the contract terminated or if it was just voidable at that point at the driver's election. It says in there, like Team Lotus will attempt to put forward it's the best car that it can, but it can't make any promises about the performance of the car, but it'll use all of its best efforts to do so. And specifically said that Senna is the number one driver, will be considered the number one driver, and will have precedence over, if there's only one set of update parts, for example, he can take the parts for his car rather than them going to, I forget who the second driver was. It was a Honda factory driver that was the second driver that year.
That's interesting because I've always questioned, why you see some of these teams running clearly outside the points. I don't know what they're racing for. I mean, aside from I know that racing is amazing, and and I'm sure those drivers want to be on track. I'm sure they want to get the data, but sure, I'm sure it's contractually in there somewhere. The FIA or Liberty Media might have other contracts trying to drive that. I mean, clearly from a media standpoint, you don't want there to only be like 15 cars after the first 30 laps of the race, because people just do the math and figure you could save a few bucks on tires or something if you drop out. But yeah, no, that's interesting to hear that some of that's being driven from those driver contracts.
Well, and I do wonder if, of course, I haven't seen this. This is really mostly speculation on my part. But I do wonder if some of it isn't sponsor money driven too. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if some of those sponsorship contracts, say that, Camel's going to pay, I'm making this up, right? Camel's going to pay $15 million a year to be the sponsor of Lotus in '87. And for every, championship point above that, Lotus has to pay another, $100,000 or whatever to compensate the team for the extra market exposure that Camel is getting as a result of, being on the side of a popular car rather than being on the side of, whatever it was in '87 Arrows or, whoever. So, yeah. And obviously there's, just sponsor pressures we've seen in, Drive to Survive in that episode with, of this season with Zach Brown, when he's sitting down with like the guy from Google and I don't know, what's the foreign exchange thing that they have, OKX or whatever it is, and there was one of their other big sponsors. Did you watch it and see that episode?
Yeah, I remember the Google stuff. Yeah, I forget who the foreign exchange was, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's sitting down with these 3 big sponsors. Are like, we're kind of really concerned that you guys suck, basically. And he said, yeah, and it's the same thing we saw last year. Like, Zach Brown was really upfront about that. Yeah, we're going to suck through about race 6, and then And then we know at that point we're going to have an update that's really going to make a difference, but it's not going to be there until race 6. And that was pretty much the line that he held with those guys. And then he was right, to his credit. You know, they were a lot better after the update.
Quick sidebar. How do you feel about the chrome wheels joke? I kind of hate it. How they had like the Google Chrome logo on their wheels, so it's supposed to be chrome wheels. I could do without
I think it's
it. Yeah,
I think that's
it doesn't make for an attractive car, in my humble opinion.
I agree, and it's not even clever.
Yeah,
really. I mean, it's so low hanging.
They should have made actual chrome wheels.
Yes,
sponsored by Google Chrome.
Yeah, that would have been much better.
Yeah, I'm here for that. Or Chrome car, the Google Chrome car.
Oh my gosh, that would be so awesome.
I'm here for it.
Except
Orange
they
and
probably
Chrome.
can't. Right, they probably can't spare the extra, 8 ounces of chrome wrap that would go on it.
Yuki Tsunoda signs for McLaren. You heard it here first.
That's it.
So they can afford the chrome.
That's it.
So tell me, I'm curious. The out clause, is that a thin clause? Is there a bunch of money trading hands? Like how does that work?
So on Senna's contract, the out clause was really interesting. And as I was reading, I thought, man, it doesn't seem like this is the way it really works. Which as someone who drafts and reviews contracts all the time, like one of the main goals is to draft a contract that actually is, like enforceable and performable, right? Like, but not to make it impossible. Even for the things that you don't want to happen, you still want them to happen in an orderly fashion, just so everyone's expectations are the same. But his contract was like, your representatives, and by you I mean Senna, your representatives, anyone speaking on your behalf cannot enter into any discussions or negotiations about driving for another team until, I'm going to make up a date here.
Mm-hmm.
It's about right. Like August 8th, 1987 for your second year. So, you're not allowed to talk about this to anybody until August 8th, 1987. And you have to notify us not later than August 8th, 1987, if you're going to bail on the second year. And you can bail on the second year. I think it was a free termination. I don't think there was a buyout clause on it, on his. But it was like, wait, you can't talk to anyone until 12 o'clock a.m. on August 27th. You have to notify the team by, let's say, 11:59 p.m. that day. And you have to give them notice ahead of time, which is also in the clause. You have to give them notice ahead of time that you're going to announce that you're leaving. Like it was like a 24-hour time window.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is why I thought, boy, that seems like it's screaming for a breach of contract, right? Because like it's not like at 12:01 a.m. the agent's going to be picking up, maybe it was all of a sudden we're fielding calls from, Williams and Ron Dennis at McLaren, right? And we haven't talked about it at all the entire season. There was no winky in the paddock, but at 12:01 a.m. Ron Dennis is calling Senna's agent and saying, hey, by the way, we'd like to work out a deal for you. And we're going to work this entire deal out, at least the major terms of it, here in the next, 4 to 5 hours. Everybody will be fine with it so that you can tell Lotus at like 9 a.m. that you're going to, tell the world at, 4 p.m. so that you're not in contractual breach, right? It was a little bit odd because those conversations are going on all the time. And we know that because we hear about it in the news. Like there's so much speculation always about where drivers are going and what's going to happen in the future. And ultimately that paddock is really small, right? I mean, it's 10 teams.
Yeah.
It's, 20 current drivers. It's 10 team managers. There's probably no more than, 20 or 30 agents that are involved in this whole thing. Like, and the between the team principals and the other folks at the team that are responsible for that, like the entire universe of people that are actually involved in those negotiations is probably fewer than 200, probably well fewer than 200 people, which means they're all talking to each other all the time.
I envision one of those flyers maybe like posted to Senna's like garage, with like where you like tear off the phone number, and it's just like, hey, starting at 12:01 a.m. on August 8th,
That's when his agent tapes it up on the door.
Yeah.
And he tears off 2 of them himself just to right, to make it look like there's already interest in Senna, because we better get on this guy. He's like a used ATV.
I feel like you've done this before. Yeah, you're a marketing genius, Maury.
That's right. I've watched Netflix, and So and there were some other. I'm trying to think of the other interesting parts of the contract. He was allowed both sides of his helmet for personal sponsors. Which, like for a long time, I don't know if it was that season, but I think Nacional, which I think is a bank in Brazil, was a sponsor of his. He was allowed 4 patches on the front of his driver suit for personal sponsors, but they all had to go lower on his torso than the team sponsors. Or it could be one patch that was 30 centimeters by 12 centimeters, like the equivalent size of 4 patches. He was allowed 1 patch on the back of his driver suit for a personal sponsor.
Okay.
There was a appendix. There were 6 appendices to it, which was interesting. And I didn't memorize it, obviously, and I don't remember all of it. But one of the things that was interesting was he had an existing contract with Ford Motor Company of Brazil. And so that was a carve out because, Lotus was a manufacturer, right? And so he wasn't one of the things he was prohibited from doing was being having personal sponsorship by any brands that competed with the team sponsor. So if Valvoline was a Lotus sponsor, he couldn't go out and be a Pennzoil guy, right? But there was a carve out for Ford of Brazil because he had apparently had an existing contract with Ford of Brazil. And so he could he could continue that relationship with Ford of Brazil, but only in Brazil, and couldn't wear in any of his, that's another interesting thing I'll get to. Couldn't wear any of his Team Lotus gear in the Ford ads. There was to be no crossover with that at all. There was a provision in the contract that all of his personal sponsors had to be in good taste.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, acceptable to the team. It was very interesting. It's a very if we could put the link up in the show notes. Just because it's interesting background, like I was saying before we got on the pod, I'm sure the modern contract, and I think that whole thing was 17 or 21 typewritten double-spaced pages. It's not really, for a contract of that nature, it was very small. Had a waiver of injury clause, hey buddy, we all know Formula One's dangerous stuff. You can't sue us if you are injured or die. Your state can't in this sport. I assume that's a standard kind of disclaimer for really probably all motorsports. And I should say, if any of our listeners have any pro level motorsports contracts and could forward them along to us, I won't publish them. I'm not going to put them on social media. I'll keep them in confidence, but I'm very curious. If you want them in confidence, I'll do it on background. But I'm very curious. I'd love to see a modern Formula One driver contract, a modern, NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, any of those contracts, just because I'm a nerd. But I think it would be interesting to see. I suspect there's essentially I may be wrong, a standard form contract that they all kind of adhere to. And there's going to be little things that change from here to there. Yuki Tsunoda is not going to be able to negotiate the terms in a contract that, Lewis Hamilton's going to be able to negotiate.
Right.
We know that a lot of the top drivers have out clauses that if, frankly, Ferrari is, I think most of them are Ferrari out clauses. If Ferrari offers me a seat, I can get out of this contract with little to no penalty because Ferrari's such a historic team. I know Vettel had one of those. Alonso had one. I assume Lewis did, given the way that he had, signed his AMG contract and then almost immediately outed it for the following season. Once that Ferrari seat, I mean, it wasn't even open for him, really, right? I mean, but it is now.
Go Sainz.
Yeah, poor Carlos, my favorite driver in Formula One. There's probably something else in there that I'm forgetting that's actually pretty interesting.
You're talking about him having to be exclusive to the Ford in Brazil.
Yeah.
Maybe wearing a generic suit, and you said you had another thought on that, but that's fine. If it comes to you, we can chat about it. But it's slipping my mind. But then a lot of it was that was what it was. One of the provisions of the contract said that Senna basically would promote the team sponsors and had these, team sponsor promo days and whatever. And, that's kind of an entertainment industry thing. Like, look, the day starts, you get 8 hours in a 24-hour period. It starts when he's on site and that clock runs 8 hours once he's there. And if it's only an hour, that's a day. Like, you don't get the other 7 hours back. You don't get, 56 hours in a season or something. Like, you get 10 days, 10 8-hour days, no matter how many of those hours you actually use. That's what you get. But one of the provisions said that sponsors could use his likeness, image in his team gear, in their promotional items, advertising, whatever, but they could not put words in his mouth. I'm paraphrasing, but Camel could not say, I, Ayrton Senna, believe that unfiltered camels are the best smoke on the planet. Right. Sure. None of his sponsors could like first person him into an ad, like his endorsement into an ad. It had to be, it could be his image. I suppose if he actually said it, it would be a different story. But like the marketing person at Elf, can't say, Ayrton Senna says our gas is the best gas, right, or
something like that. It would just have to be, an Elf ad with Ayrton Senna in the car, probably, or whatever. It was interesting to see what was in there and kind of also, what isn't. Like I mean, not that $1.5 million isn't real money now, and it certainly was, real money in, 1987. Right. But, it still wasn't quite as much as I expected.
Really? That seems a little high to me, but okay.
Okay. Yeah. And then like the sponsor stuff was interesting. Like, the sponsors could I think it said that the sponsors could either pay his private services company directly or could pay Team Lotus for his participation in some of that. And it was funny because there were quite a few things that were like, well, it's going to be this or it's going to be that, or as mutually agreeable. Right. Okay. Which to me is with all the work that I do, like, or as mutually agreeable in a contract is a problem. Yeah. Because what it means is either one side or the other can just, negate that part of the contract. Well, it's mutually agreeable and we don't agree. So I'm
Right.
not, I'm not flying to, Munich to do an ad for Camel cigarettes or whatever. Yeah, that was surprising. But, then again, if you have to negotiate the entire contract and inside 24 hours, maybe some of
Right.
those issues just have to be, left open for later development because you've got to get it done. I'm assuming, I don't remember where he came from before Lotus. Do you?
No, I wasn't
Internet.
prepared for this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. Wherever he came from, before, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a similar, kind of out in their contract, or he might have been. I mean, truth is, he might have been out of contract at the end of that season, and and a free agent. Who knows?
Interesting.
But yeah,
Well, thanks.
it was interesting to read. As both a Formula One follower and a contract nerd, to see how that all developed.
Great. Well, I can't. Racers HQ can't wait to get your invoice. So thank you for the billable hours.
It's a lifestyle, a podcast, and a legal services corporation.
That's right. Yeah, you heard it here first. Good stuff, man. Well, that was some valuable insight into what it must be like to be a real race car driver. I forget what my Subaru contract looked like. I think it was put a sticker on the side of the car and podium, and we'll send you $100. So, anyway, that was my only experience.
Yeah, and what the writer on there should have been was you will send me all the EJ 205s that I could possibly need.
Yeah.
Because at that point, no one, certainly among us, we didn't all know that that was a real issue.
Yes. Yeah. Subscribe and save to your EJ25s.
That's right.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, I think we did a podcast. We're at about an hour now. Any other hot topics to wrap up here? I don't know if we get another pod in before the race, but we're super excited for it. Super excited for everybody that's going to come check out Tarp Racing at Hallett in early May. We got 50 cars, 50 teams registered.
Looks like it's about 50 teams, so I think that's a slight increase over last year, which is good for us. Hopefully, we have good weather. That's my fingers are crossed for. I think we're especially having a good turnout among Tarp folks. I think our friend Ben is going to make it up for Saturday. Yeah,
awesome.
Make it up for probably Saturday and Sunday at this point. So our friend Dave is maybe 80% in for to make it. So when he hears our dulcet tones on the podcast airwaves, hopefully that'll motivate him to get over the top and come on up with us. Be nice to have Dave there too.
And bring that air-conditioned TV van you got.
I in my conversation with Dave, he said that the TV van probably will not make the trip this time. I think it needs a little bit more maintenance work than he has time available to do between now and then, which is too bad, because I know you all like the AC and I like having that mast up in the air. I just think it's so super nerdy and awesome.
Yeah.
But hopefully, even would love to have Dave there, regardless of van status, and all of our friends. And I think you guys up there especially are going to have some friends and family out for the race, so that's exciting.
And we'll have 6 drivers, so I mean there'll be lots of friends and family. And do you think we'll be able to put up the scoreboard? Like, are we going to be able to lug some displays up there, or is that so we can?
Yeah, we'll have at least a couple of them. If we could maybe find a OKC local big screen TV or something like that, that might be good, because I don't think I'm going to have another one, but I'll have 2 or 3 laptop sized displays for stuff that we can run if you guys can. The truth is, in the attic I have a inflatable movie screen that I've never, that was for this purpose, that I've never implemented, but I don't have the projector for it.
I have a projector, but projectors during the day, not so great.
Yeah, we'd have to have it in a shady location.
Yeah. But yeah, that was some good feedback from Alyssa last race because like everybody was watching the standings on their phones, looking
Yep.
for lap times and things like that. But if you had some, some guests that maybe weren't as technologically savvy come by the paddock, they would just kind of be like, "What's happening?" And everybody else is just being antisocial. So, yeah, I think if we could all be kind of eyes up looking at a scoreboard. So we'll work on that. Yeah, let's work on that offline. We might be able to find a TV. I don't think the 85-inch Sony's coming up, but somewhere in between.
That'd be pretty big move.
Yeah, it's not
I don't think we need that. And I think the other kind of trade off for that is, we're a little bit less weather protected at this race.
Yeah.
If it gets rainy or windy, and so we got to kind of keep that in mind for the electronics package too, because it's not like laptops and those monitors are all weather sealed the way the stuff in the race car is.
Yep. Yep.
But that'd be awesome. I mean, the truth is, we could have it there, and then if it gets nasty, we tear it down and put it inside one of the trucks or the trailer or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think I think Alyssa's observation is very smart.
Yeah. Very good. All right, man. Well, any shout outs before we wrap this up?
Shout out to all my homies coming down from OKC to do the AHOD. It's always a blast when you guys are here. It's why, getting all the boys together is really why we do the racing. I mean, you've heard that. Audience has heard me say that over and over again. I don't like NASA. I don't mind NASA. Sprint racing doesn't do it for me because it's the team that I like.
Yeah.
The racing is sort of secondary.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
the
it.
racing is the excuse for the team.
Shout out to you. Shout out to your lovely wife for hosting us and always being such a gracious host. Made us gumbo on Sunday. I mean, get out of here. Just so
that's you guys could chalk that up to Roland. So if Roland, I'm sure hasn't hung on this long in the podcast, but Roland had. Yeah, exactly. We'll have to tell him just to fast forward to 1 hour and 1 minute into the podcast. But Roland was saying that he had had a dream or something about gumbo or something, and oh no, that's what it was. They went out to dinner on Thursday night, and wherever they were was serving gumbo and something else, and he was like, "No, I'm going to have this something else because I'm probably going to have." Gumbo. Rachel's probably going to make gumbo when I'm in Dallas, and hers is the best. And so then of course once my bride hears that, it's like, oh well, we're making gumbo because Roland wants gumbo, and she had already planned on making gumbo for dinner on Sunday night, so it just sort of moved it down by one meal time. But so Roland once again gets what he wants.
Such an influencer, that Roland.
That's right.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be getting a functional cool shirt this year.
That's right. So, we at least know the system circulates because we tested that on Saturday and Sunday.
Very good. Well, yeah, big shout out to you, Pat, and again your wife for hosting us, and all the listeners, all the new listeners, all the listeners that have dropped off by now. We love you, haters too. And yeah, check us out on RacersHQ.com. Remember, it's not just a podcast, it's a lifestyle. Rate and review, like and subscribe, share with your family, and we will see you at the track. Bye, everybody.
Good night, America.
Sorry, wrong button.